Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. It's always a pleasure to be with VST. I've always looked forward to these events, and I look forward to meeting you guys in person, hopefully next year, diba, when things get a bit more normal. Um, so allow me to start off and present, just so that in the interest of time. Um, and really, the topic I wanted to discuss is the future of work. And so, over the past year and a half, now the world has changed significantly. What we once thought of as a 2 week reprieve from our offices launched into a year long implementation of remote work and all the challenges that came with it. At Cisco, we take this change to heart and have made it our vision to power an inclusive future for all. So key to our mission is that understanding of technology's role in leveling the playing field for more than 3 billion digital workers. Opportunities unevenly distributed. Diba? So we have a lot of rich countries, a lot of poor countries, a lot of large enterprises and small ones. But potential is not. So technology has allowed us to tap into that potential and give organizations and workforces across the world a voice. As the world learns from the lockdowns and copes with the transitions post-pandemic, one thing has become very clear. Technology has allowed the world to continue to work and thrive across different locations, different cultures and nations, and different socio-economic groups. So if I were to ask everyone, what does the future of work look like? We've asked a lot of our customers about this as well. And I wanted to share with you the results and also our opinion on what that future will look like post-pandemic. But before I begin, now let's start with a look back. What was work like pre-pandemic? So pre-pandemic, so February 2020 and before, what did the workplace look like? For most of us, work was defined as the four corners or the four walls of our office. Diba? It was a physical location. It also meant that work was a commute. Now, for our day starts with the commute. For me, I live in Farview, diba? And so that commute was 2 hours one way. So I had 2 hours one way to the office, 2 hours back at home, and then 8 hours, 8 to 9 hours in between. But the nice thing about that work was that everything was face to face. I actually saw my coworkers, I saw the people I had to meet, and then there was a lot of interaction. What happened in March of 2020? Just a very quick look back. In March of 2020, we were all shocked. We were surprised that we had to take a 2 week away from the office setup, right? I mean, remember at that point in time, the discussion was 2 weeks lang yan. It was going to be a 2 week quarantine. And with that 2 week quarantine, a lot of decisions were made. How do I become productive? How do my employees become productive in the next 2 weeks? And so a lot of tools were selected during those 2 weeks. Those 2 weeks became 2 months. Those 2 months became 6 months. And eventually now we're looking at a year and a half, almost 2 years, wherein we've actually been doing remote. Now we'd like to stress that at this point in time, one, it was very resilient of the business community, for us to actually adapt very quickly in order to actually be productive. So what happened was that there was very little downtime for a lot of organizations because we instantly adapted a tool, but whether that be WebEx or some other tool that you're actually already using. But what we wanted to also highlight here was that the thinking was always that this was temporary. Is my voice coming out clear? Question lang. Because I saw a comment. Mal? Okay. So the thinking was that it was a temporary solution. And also what came with that was that people were willing to compromise. And when I say compromise, at this point in time, no one was thinking that this was a permanent setup. And if this wasn't a permanent setup, then we were very forgiving. We were forgiving when audio was bad. We were forgiving, when there were distractions, when there was noise, background noise. We were forgiving when there was even lag. So a lot of these things are actually happening, and a lot of these things we became very forgiving and we were willing to compromise because it wasn't a permanent setup. Now, as the vaccinations have started and as people are starting to plan for 2022, diba, this becomes a question of what will the future look like. Will we go back to 2020? Will we go back to 2019 even? Diba? And go all face-to-face, no remote work? Or will we stay remote? Or will we stay somewhere in between? And we think at that point in time that this is actually, the question is really, how do you make sure that if you're going to take a hybrid setup, how do you make sure that what we have is actually going to be something that we can take forward and grow and build? And so good enough, compromises are not something that we have to start thinking about. It now becomes an architecture discussion. So it's no longer what tool can I use quickly, but what tool can I use moving forward and making sure that it will be a stable environment. It will be a secure environment, that the experience is perfect. Because that's what we expect when we're in the four walls of the office. So for us now, we believe that future of work is hybrid. And when we say that it's hybrid, that means that sometimes people will be working from home, sometimes they'll be working from the office, and sometimes they're somewhere in between. But the reality, what the really interesting thing is that people are going to be able to move from one work style to another. In a recent survey that we actually did, these are some of the things that we noted, or some of the things of note. One was that for the workforce, 64% of employees say that the ability to work from anywhere, that flexibility, will make it affects their decision to stay or leave a job. So this becomes even more interesting for the millennials and for the Gen Z, because unlike me, I'll just claim my age. So unlike me, I value stability. But for the younger generation, they value that flexibility, that ability for them to work the way they want to work. Another thing we've noted was that 98% of all meetings moving forward will have at least one remote participant. So imagine I've already opened up my office. I have my office already. I've invited my team into a conference room. We're going to do brainstorming, or we're going to plan the next marketing event. And then I have 2 to 5 people who are actually remote. How does that work? Do I huddle around a laptop just so that the people remote will be able to hear me? Or do I ask everyone to bring their laptops but turn off their audio so that there's no feedback? Because the problem is that although 98% of all meetings moving forward will have at least one remote participant, only 6% of meeting rooms actually have a video device inside. So there are a lot of problems with hybrid work now moving forward. But one thing I wanted to also stress is that hybrid work is not just an IT problem to solve. In fact, it affects multiple areas of your organization. From the tools you plan to use to the policies and procedures and activities you need to put in place to keep your workforce engaged, and even down to the design and operation of the office facilities. So if you can see, it is a multi line of business approach. But it's a multi-department approach. It's IT, HR, facilities, and maybe marketing and a few other departments as well. It is also not just a collaboration approach. Remember my discussion that it has to be an architecture approach, that it's not a compromise. So for us to be able to put in a world-class hybrid work solution, then you also have to look at networking. You have to make sure that your network is properly enabled, even for your remote workers. It's about the devices and their collaboration solutions, and it's about security. So what does success look like? So with all of these factors in mind, we wanted to zero in on a few characteristics that we feel is key to make an important or a successful hybrid work implementation. So we've spent a lot of time with our customers to understand what's important to them, and they've zeroed in on 5 key characteristics. One is that it has to be flexible, meaning that I can choose from wherever, in the office, remote, on my laptop, on my phone, with the conferencing solution or with the video device, and that it's just a natural extension of my work activities. Number 2 is that it should also give me that ability to choose, diba, how I want to work or how I want to present myself. It also has to be inclusive, and that means that everyone has an equal seat at the table. Now, regardless if I'm working remote or in the office, that I can actually participate equally. We tend to downplay, the challenges involved in bringing everyone in regardless of where they're at. But to a certain extent, we have come to compromise and accept that distractions are just the norm. And in doing so, have asked remote participants to just mute themselves to avoid impeding a meeting. As we move forward, we don't believe that this is a sustainable philosophy. At Cisco, we feel that regardless of where you work, and that includes whether you're working like me, I'm surrounded by 14 dogs, well, actually 13 now, that everyone should feel confident that they can participate freely in meetings. It also should be supportive. So meaning that your work environment should allow you to, one, make sure that people are safe when they go to the office, and number two, that you're actually managing their well-being. It has to be secure. Now, there's no point in adopting a hybrid work solution if you can't secure your assets. Diba? Because the benefits of working remote and working hybrid do not far outweigh the risks you have if you have data loss. And then it has to be managed. So remember that as we start rolling these out, the more people starting to work remote, this is no longer a compromised solution. Your remote workers have to be treated as branches. So before, IT was expected to just manage offices and your physical locations, but every remote worker now becomes a location that you have to manage. And so having that infrastructure in place to do so becomes very key as well. So for us, that approach to hybrid work looks at multiple areas. Diba? So as I mentioned, policies and procedures, how you manage your workforce, what workflows come into play, your actual workspaces, and even the events that you do, like this one. So right now we're doing events fully virtual. Moving forward, we will probably even have hybrid events. Also, as I mentioned, hybrid work isn't just about collaboration. It's not just about the collaboration tools you have. At Cisco, we've actually tried to define what our hybrid work approach was. And as you can see here, only the blue portions are actually collaboration. Everything else is network and security. So we believe that if you wanted to have a very successful hybrid work implementation, that you had to factor in all of these things when you start planning out your infrastructure. That you had the proper network infrastructure to cover not just your office spaces, but also your remote workers, that you had security across the board, and then that you also had your correct collaboration tools. So how can we ensure that hybrid work is a success? So before I do that, I wanted to show you or give you a glimpse of how I work at home. So just like most of you, I spent the last year and a half working from home. Unlike some of you, that meant working from my living room. So as I don't have a study or a home office. So just like you, I start my day on my laptop. I've managed to also get a desk camera. So this one's a Cisco desk camera that I'm using. I also use my headset, also from Cisco. And then if I really want to focus on the discussion. And then I have a very unique security solution. So I have my intrusion detection solution, which is technically my dog. So as you can see, my dog is actually on my desk. She has the tendency also to be very noisy. I have 13 of them. All of them like to actually start barking at certain times in the day. But lucky for me, I've actually been able to work regardless because of the solutions that we have, that we have in place that allow me to work without the distractions of noise and without the distractions of except the physical distraction when she actually hits my laptop. So for us, the way we see how you can make hybrid work great is around 4 key areas. Getting work done better, making remote work productive, how do you update your spaces, and then how do you manage people, spaces, and technology. So for getting the work done, we feel that the very first thing that you have to look at is to have a single solution. That you have a common platform that you can use whether you're at home, in the office, and anywhere in between. you also have to make sure that it's a simple product, but that it's a simple solution, that it's not something that you have to keep retraining your people, that going into each conference room, it's the same experience. We did mention about events being hybrid, and also making sure that you can embed all of these workflows into all of these applications to a seamless workflow. So for us, when we say seamless, so that means that across all of the devices, your IP phones, your laptop, your tablets, even your video endpoints and your mobile phones, it should actually work the same way. I did mention about events. So when we talk about events, we also are looking at the future of events. Now, wherein because of remote work and because of the virtual events that we've done, we've realized that we can actually reach more audiences. So even when we start reopening, and we will be reopening, for example, Cisco Live in June in Las Vegas, it will have a virtual component as well, that you can actually join virtually. Now, when we talk about making remote work sustainable, all of the solutions in the market have done a good job and have come up with a lot of different features. We've actually come up with virtual backgrounds, breakout rooms, and this is not just WebEx, but this is most solutions providers have already come out with this. And all of this is because we wanted to make sure that experience was perfect. The other thing we wanted to do now, and what we've announced very recently, was that we wanted to make sure that background noise was something that we could control. So we already released a background noise cancellation way back last year, in 2020, which we feel was very powerful. Our Babel Labs acquisition allowed us to remove all non-human background sound. And in the interest of time, I won't do the demo now, but I did a demo before where I actually was holding a vacuum cleaner, and right beside me, you could only hear my voice and not the vacuum cleaner. We wanted to take that a step further, because if we're going to start working remotely, that means that I can work from a conference room, I can work in my desk beside my coworker, I can work in Starbucks. And so now WebEx can actually do optimize for my voice. So meaning that it will only listen to my voice, and it will drown out all human voices behind me. And this is because we feel that it has to be about focus. It has to be about allowing me to work from anywhere and not having to mute myself constantly. We also wanted to focus on well-being. And so there are actually tools within WebEx to give you that people insight about how you're working, and for managers, how your team is working, and give you that idea. Are you scheduling meetings inside your office hours? Are you scheduling meetings outside of people's office hours, for that matter? We wanted to also note that, remember the stat, 6.4% lang ng conference rooms have video endpoints. So we feel that if you want to do a proper hybrid workplace, you also have to update your office spaces. So office spaces now take on a different form. Because of hybrid work, you're actually working from anywhere, from kitchens, from bedrooms, from home offices, from cafes, from doctors' offices, and even inside the office, there are different areas that are happening. Specifically, we've been seeing the rise of the hot desk. Hot desking itself is not a new thing. It has been around. I know one of our peers, IBM, has been doing hot desking for quite a while. But what we're seeing now is that hot desking will be the norm moving forward. Kasi as you have team A and team B, yung shifting, when you start to reopen the offices, it now becomes key, how do you manage that space? Because now your real estate, which is that 100 people, is only accommodating 50. So reallocating that space and also making sure that the cubicles are not anymore personal, but actually hot desks, is something that you also have to start to consider. We also wanted to make sure that when you start planning out your office spaces, that you also look at the entire workflow. So from the time of finding a hot desk that you can sit in, to looking for that space through wayfinding, like Waze, indoor Waze, to booking spaces and using in digital signages and the video endpoints as a digital signage, and also auto checking in and room releasing. So one of the things we noted is that dati pa lang, even before, meeting rooms was a scarce resource. People book them, they don't use them. So how do you now make sure na that because people are hybrid and there are so many moving pieces, how do you make sure na that you can actually check into rooms or release rooms when they're not being used? So we're also looking at how do you automate that procedure. The other thing that I wanted to highlight, when we start planning upgrading your spaces and looking at, for example, video devices for your office spaces, is that even if you're standardized on one platform, so for us, that's WebEx. For some of you, it might be any of the following, no, Zoom, Teams, or Google Meet. Now that whatever device you put into your conference room should be able to interoperate. So for us, no, that is a very key point. And that's why when we designed our devices, our video endpoints, we made sure that it can interoperate with Zoom, with Microsoft Teams, with Google Meet. Because even if I'm using WebEx 90% of the time, I will get invites from customers, diba, who are using another platform. And I should be able to join them with the meeting devices I have. Not just my laptop, but also the video devices inside my meeting rooms. So imagine a situation, 9 to 10 is a WebEx meeting, 10 to 11 is Zoom, 11 to 12 is Microsoft Teams. I should be able to join each one without calling IT. And then my last point, no, and I'll run this very quickly, is about managing the management portion. So we feel that you should have a single pane of glass. So for us, that's Control Hub, which allows us to look at everything, your calls, your meetings, your messages, your IP phones and hardware devices, your video endpoints, contact center, everything, all of the things you need to manage your collaboration, your communication in one pane of glass. Similarly, no, we wanted to have full visibility of the network. Remember, diba, when we talk about hybrid work, it's not just about the people in your office, but also people who are remote. So for the office, no, we have DNA Spaces, which actually sees the usage of the facilities. You can see how many people are in your office. You can see how you can track, no, where people are congregating, so you know if there's social distancing. But also, no, the ability to see into your networks, even as they go into the public internet. So we have those networking solutions that allow you to manage that entire portfolio. No? So it's an end-to-end visibility for us, both on the physical spaces, but also into the network. Security is also very key. And so we actually work with a lot of security vendors as well as our own security solutions to provide end-to-end encryption, which WebEx can do, but also inline data loss prevention. So we can do a lot of the solutions that today will support end-to-end encryption. Just note that you have to turn it on. It's not on by default, but not all meetings are end-to-end encrypted, but our messaging platform is. And then also, how do you manage, as people start working with messages and with chat solutions, which are becoming more prevalent than email at this point? How do you make sure also that you can actually keep those information in check? So for us, we work with the DLP solutions, whether that's a Cisco solution or third party. Now we can work with them to make sure that even as I send messages, IT is secure, that even as I send messages, I won't be able to send confidential ones out, to people who shouldn't be receiving them. And then just as a last point, there was a study by the NSA on 17 different collaboration providers, and WebEx came out on top. Now because we wanted to make sure that as we design these things, that security is very key. Diba? And so remember this, you may choose us or you may choose some other solution, but at the end of the day, hybrid work will not work. Sorry for the pun. It will not work if you're not secure. So just to end, we wanted to highlight that, yes, we feel that the future of work is hybrid. That even though we start to open up our offices and even if we miss our office mates, that the learnings we've done in the past few months will actually still continue. Remote work has been productive for a lot of us, but moving forward, even as we start to reopen our offices, we feel that this is going to be a situation that people will define their work style and their work habits in different ways, but it will most likely be a hybrid workplace. So I'd like to end here and open the floor up for any questions.